So today's membership meeting, we are going to focus on the self-direction budget process. We do have some updates for you though first. So Liz, if we want to jump to that screen, I think the next one is just letting you guys know that the next meeting is in June and we plan on discussing recent happenings. Like I said, if you haven't already joined the mailing list, go ahead and do so. And then anyone who's interested in participating in the future planning and sustainability committee, go ahead and reach us at the info@marylandsds.org. As always, that's where you can reach us for anything else that you might need to contact us about. Alrighty, Liz, now I'm ready for the update screen. And Alicia, I will let you take it from there.
Great, thanks. Welcome, everyone. We have a really nice turnout today, and I won't take up too much of your time because I know you came to hear about budgets. I just wanted to let you know that I was notified yesterday that our bill has become law. As far as I know, there was no signing. But their governor does have one more tentative signing schedule on his list for May 26th. But either which way, it's now law. And so I want to say thank you to each and every one of you who helped to make that happen with your advocacy. So thank you very, very much. An update on the FMS, because I know everybody's been asking what's going on with that. It looks as though there are going to be 3 FMSs, one of our current ones and 2 new ones. We are awaiting their contract approval through the Board of Public Works. Next meeting, I understand, is June 8th, so stay tuned. Plan season is upon us, so the budget modification right now uses Appendix K, and we'll be touching on that later. As of June 30th, there may or may not be a different form. We have not yet heard. And in addition, the DDA has sent out a notice, an email notice for a webinar from about reasonable and customary rates that will be effective as of July 1. So I encourage everybody to sign up for that DDA webinar, and hopefully we will be able to learn and talk about it in our June meeting if we need to. So that's it for the updates. And now on to the show. Sarah?
Sorry. All righty, guys. So when you decided to take on the self-direction program and all that it is, you have 2 authorities. One is going to be the employer authority and the other is budget authority. And so kind of understanding what each of those authorities give you permission to do within the self-directed program is really important to understand. So the first of which is employer authority. And that means that you have decision-making authority to recruit, hire, fire, train, and supervise the individuals who are going to be working for you. It's not a provider who's hiring those staff and training them and firing them. The other authority that you have is going to be that decision-making authority over how your Medicaid waiver funds in the budget are going to be spent. As long as it's in the waiver guidelines, you have the authority to choose how you spend it. And so if you have any questions or concerns about either of those authorities, I encourage you to chat with your support broker, your CCS, those who are on your team, but that's kind of really important to understand before we jump into all of this. So Liz, if you want to jump to the next slide, we will start with how you actually figure out where to start. So on the screen, there is an image of the detailed service authorization that you guys are probably familiar with, whoopsie daisy, seeing in your plans. I realize that it is difficult to see, so we have actually attached it to the email that we sent out last night for your reference, but we wanted to show you when we pull that slide up kind of where that budget total comes from. So you're going to see in this example that on the left-hand side under the monthly services tab, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself. So at your annual plan meeting, your team and you are going to discuss what type of services you could benefit from. If you are somebody who is already participating in the SDS program, you're analyzing what services worked for you, what services didn't work for you. Is there a service that maybe you need to increase, decrease? But these are conversations that you're having with your team, 90 days out from your annual implementation, on how can best serve you. So you're going to see those, your CCS takes those back to LTSS, which is the database that they use, and they plug them into this tool called the Detailed Service Authorization tool. And this is a tool that your CCS should be sharing with you. It can be found in your plan. And you're going to see on the left-hand side is the services that you and your team discussed. And then on the right-hand side, you're going to see the total cost of that service for, in this case, the annual, how much it costs to fund that service over the course of a year. And these are based on rate studies that DDA does. The cost of living is now worked into these. So these figures will change, but they all are added up to give you your total plan year cost, which is the number that's highlighted at the very bottom of this document. And that's the figure that you have to work with and actually start to put into motion the services that your team discussed. So we're going to take this opportunity to actually pull up the budget document and work through it with you guys, and just show you the basics of where you put what. So Carol is going to help me out with this. She's going to be sharing her screen and jumping in. We're going to take questions at the end if we have time, but hopefully I get everything covered. All right. Oh, Carol, you're ready for me.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Oh, hold on. There it is. Okay, there's always something wrong. Okay, so the budget that was from the last sheet on the LTSS service authorization page was $163,084.96. This second block is going to be the total of this budget sheet, and then this third block tells how much of it you haven't allocated. This will be an annual PCP. This is for Shane Doe. Effective dates would be the dates of your plan, which for most people is still the July 1st, but if it's something else, you would put that. Okay. Pressure typing in front of all these people. All right. We don't know that this is still needed, but some CCSs are asking for this. So this was from an old way of paying for things with the FMSs. So you just put in the best guesses you've got.
It should be 6/30/23.
33. Thank you.
23. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Good.
And that's why this is important to do in a team.
Yes. Yes.
The drop down that Carol
like that on
just
purpose so
populated.
you can catch up. What? I just
The
kidding.
drop down that Carol just populated where it says community pathways. If you are unfamiliar with the type of waiver that you are in, that would be a question to direct towards your CCS. So it could be one of the three waivers that populated. So I just wanted to mention that not everybody's in community pathways. So if you're unsure, check with your CCS.
Okay, and then you type the name, your FMS in here. So this ARC CCRs, who most people in self-direction are with right now. All right, support broker. Most support brokers are vendors. You have to go all the way down to the last line. If you put it up here, it will be in the wrong place. The other thing to mention, if this was a brand new plan, make sure you put money in here for the orientation and initial startup with a support broker. This is where you can do up to 15 hours total. So do the maximum of 4 and then 12 months. So now you see that the third column has gone down and the middle column is keeping track of what we're doing. So then we have 20 hours of personal supports. We're going to pay $25 an hour, 52.143 weeks of the year. And then that's the amount for that. We're going to pay, well, we're going to come down to staff benefits. So this particular family staff person does not need any health benefits, but that would be something that you could put there if they needed it. We're going to give 3 weeks of PTO, so that would be $1,500. If you do the math, it would be 20 hours times 25 times 3 weeks. In this case, the PTO, or I mean the taxes, will automatically calculate for this form. Training 100.
And the numbers that Carol is populating in here right now are just in theory. So training at 100 is,
all right. Wait, there's a garbage across the street.
if we can just make sure everybody in the chat is muted. So the numbers that Carol is populating in the budget right now are in theory. She is reviewing, you know, for example, the PTO, how she came to get that number. But you're going to want to look into training to see what the cost of that training is going to be for your staff. It may not be $100. We're using these as examples so you can see how the budget form is manipulated. Same thing with the mileage rate. So the IRS federal minimum right now is $58.5 per mile. But that changes. So again, that is your, you know, a responsibility that you have as an employer to look into those costs. And so that way you are populating accurate totals in here. So again, just wanted to note that the totals and figures that we are using in here are just for an example. But 14% taxes is what the FMS takes out to cover all of the things that they are responsible for. And I believe Karen Bradbury is on this call. She will onboard your team and explain what that 14% captures. Just making sure that you have it in your budget is my role today.
The rest of this person has a day respite provider. This is the rate from the April 1st rate sheet. So if they're having 24 days of respite, this should be the exact same number that shows up on that LTSS service authorization form. And then they also have 60 hours of respite from a staff person.
And so I'll take this time now to kind of share that if you have had time to look at the budget sheet, and I hope that everyone has a copy of the blank one in front of them. It was in the email that we sent out so that you have it as a reference, but you will note that some of the budget tool has staff, and some of the services have vendor, and some of them have both. When we jump back into the PowerPoint, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail about what separates those. But typically wage services are going to be your personal supports, your community development services, sometimes respite staff. Things that are typically vendored is going to be your support broker, your nursing services, your behavior services. But again, like I said, when we jump into the PowerPoint, I have outlined what those specific differences are. So that's something to take into consideration as you are delegating the funds in your budget. But as you can see, Carol has populated funds into the individual and family directed goods and services line item. And we just wanted to take the opportunity to note that you all are eligible for up to $500 a year in staff recruitment and advertising cost. And that can help with paid job postings, the support that it takes to get those ads out there. So making sure that if that's something that you need, that you are including that. And then we are in the CDS portion of the budget now. This looks a lot like the personal supports, where we're plugging in the number of hours that we need each week from each staff, and the rate that we anticipate on paying them. And if you haven't already noticed, I didn't think to mention, but there is 52.143 weeks in the year. And so you're going to want to make sure that you're using that under the number of weeks if you are going to be using the full year. Now, things like respite, behavior services, nursing, those are things that aren't used on a weekly basis. So you'll want to work with your team to figure out how many weeks you need to populate into your budget. For example, if you're seeing your nurse on a quarterly basis, you're only going to put in 4 weeks. You wouldn't be putting in that 52.143. And again, noting that the figures that Carol is populating in here are just for example, so you can see how the budget tool is manipulated. But most of these wage services look the same. So you're going to see where there's spots to put staff and multiple staff. So if you have one staff working 20 hours a week and one staff working 15 hours a week, you have the ability to designate them on separate line items. It also helps when you have staff that are making different wages for the services. So you're going to see an opportunity to put in their wages. And then under all of the wage services, you're also going to notice staff benefits. So things that you're able to offer to your staff, if you wish, would be health benefits, PTO, other benefits. If you are in Montgomery County, you do need to include that sick and safe. And then as Carol demonstrated, you're able to populate in training and transportation cost. And those transportation costs are separated out into mileage and then public transportation or a taxi service. So.
Okay, so I finished populating. And what we wanted to show you from this is that even though I put all this stuff in, there are still almost $50,000 in unallocated funds. So you have the opportunity to go back and start considering what other changes you might want to make or things you might have left off because you didn't think you had enough money. So we're going to start back up at the top. And so since there's money and I know that I need highly qualified staff, I might want to raise this up from $30 an hour. And then if I change that, then this is going to change, and I have to do the math to recalculate that, and that will go to $1,800. But I'm thinking maybe 3 weeks isn't enough. Maybe I'll give 5 weeks, and that would include like holidays. So it would be like 2 weeks for sick, 2 weeks for personal, and then maybe a week of holidays. So that actually is going to go up to $3,000. Then we've got some people, sometimes these staff work on holidays. So you can do something called holiday differential pay and give them like 1.5 times. So all I need to add here is 1/2 times 20 times 30 times 10 holidays. And then that you have to add the taxes on this at 14%. And that turns out to be, because it does not calculate automatically. and that has to get added in. I'm thinking maybe I want more training than I thought. Maybe I was just going to do the basic, and maybe I want them to do some behavioral training, or I want them to learn some other things. And then, so we're going to just increase that to 200 because this is random, but you could do your research on what your training is going to cost. Maybe 200 miles isn't enough if I really calculated, and everybody should be calculating what they need. So just put a little buffer in there for 250. Whoops, what did I do? Why did that go to 2 million? Oh, I changed the rate.
You change the mileage rate.
Yeah, you have to be careful with
Yeah.
numbers. Okay, so that's more reasonable. Maybe we never thought about trying an Uber or a taxi to get somewhere. So if you think that's a possibility, you could add that. None of this stuff increases the rate. This is all comes out of the rate now, so you can include more things than you might have in the past. And also, this family is providing 116 hours of gratuitous supports. So we're going to think about what happens if that family is not there for some reason, and just utilize this category that was.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Must have hit a button I shouldn't have. And then you put in, this would just be for 1 week, because this is kind of like just to get it approved in the plan, and hopefully you don't need it, but it'll be there if you do. And the rate for this service, according to the latest rate sheet, is $44.52 in this county, because certain counties have higher rates than others. And then we're not going to make any changes to the rest of it except increase the training. And then we'll go down and do the same thing to community development service. But also here, individual family goods and services is where you're able to allocate savings from your plan. And we obviously have savings. So this individual has would like to take horseback riding lessons. So we're going to put that in here. Lessons. And so we can go up to $5,000. You would figure out if you need that much, but you put what you need in there. Up to $5,000 is the cap.
And we have, when we jump back into the PowerPoint, I will go into a little bit more detail on what the criteria for individual and family directed goods and services is, because it is a popular service. This example does not include all of the services potentially accessible under the self-directed model. We try to hit on kind of some of the popular ones. So if you do utilize a service that is covered under the SDS model, but we haven't included it in today's example, there is a link to a resource that goes step by step on how to complete the budget form for all of those services in the resources that we emailed out yesterday. But like I said, when we hop back into the PowerPoint, I do have the criteria for that, since it is one of the more popular services that people take advantage of.
Okay, so we've gone through and we've made some changes and increased some of the cost, like additional training, additional miles, the emergency backup, 2 more weeks of PTO, which also includes paid holidays. We added holiday differential, so we need to add it here too. So I'm not going to do the math here. I'll just go ahead and put the amount in. And then we still have $9,300 that's unallocated, and that's okay. You don't have to utilize every penny of your allocation. What we're going to talk about later, and what DDA did a whole webinar on, was how to utilize those unallocated funds right now for the remainder of this fiscal year. So that's where that number is coming from, but this form didn't exist. So you're going to have to do the math by going to the bottom of the form, which tells you what your total is, and subtracting it from the total budget that was approved for you. So it's just kind of, this is a a way to kind of figure out, well, did we miss something? If we've got this money that the person could use, or that would be helpful to get staff to come and work for you, because you do have a pretty flexible benefits package ability and wage ability now. Oh, one thing we did want to point out, with $35 an hour at CDS, that would require an exception form. So if you don't know what that is, they have reasonable and customary rates, and they have the high cap that they put on it, or the upper limit. But if you want to go above that, you can get, there's a maximum exception, which is essentially the rate minus the 14% for taxes. So,
both of the documents that Carol has referred to are in the resources that were sent out. I got a chance to just scan the chat really quickly while Carol was speaking, and they do sometimes go to your junk because they are coming from Constant Contact. So check your junk mail. If for whatever reason you did not get to the resources today, please email us over at info@marylandsds.org so we can get those over to you. But two of the resources that are linked there are going to be the reasonable and customary. And so that is kind of the lower end and the higher end of what DDA will allow you to pay your staff. And this applies to vendors as well. So Liz, if you can go ahead and grab the PowerPoint for me. The reasonable and the customary really helps guide you in what wages you can offer. The ability that you have in self-direction is to personalize how much you choose to pay your staff. Depending on your needs, depending on the service that they are providing. And obviously different pay rates will attract different staff, and the quality of staff, the experience of staff. Back it up just a few for me. But the reasonable and the customary rates is where you can find those thresholds. And then if you need to exceed those thresholds for whatever reason, there is what is called a wage exemption form, and you would need to complete that and submit it with your plan and budget to just kind of explain to DDA why that specific staff would require a wage that exceeds what is considered allowable in the reasonable and customary. If we can hop back just a few more slides to the when should the budget be on your radar slide. So the example that we just showed you is an annual budget that is going to be done at the same time that your annual PCP meeting is happening. So typically that's 90 days out from your annual implementation date or your AID. But other times that you should just be aware of your budget would be monthly. The FMS is going to be sending out FMS expense reports. Each of them do them and format them a little bit differently, but both of them have provided guidance on how you can review those. If you need further assistance, I'm going to encourage you to reach out to your support broker, your CCS, but just kind of monitoring your budget on a month-to-month basis is going to be another responsibility that you are taking on as an employer, but obviously you're going to have the support of your team. The only other time that it would be on your radar would be if you have a change of circumstances that require you to request a difference in services. So maybe you need more services, a new service, less of a service. You would end up revising your budget at that time. Alrighty, Liz, if we can jump to the next one, I will go into a little bit more detail on the difference between employees or staff versus vendors. So I know that we kind of touched on this a little bit while Carol was populating the information in, but an employee, you must pay taxes out of your budgets. That's a 14%, that's on that budget sheet, for the payments that you're going to be making to your employee out of your budget. For employees, you decide when and how they will work. So you're going to sit down and you're going to, what schedule are they working on? You have that kind of control. And then you're going to set an hourly wage, like I said, within the reasonable and customary rates. A vendor, on the other hand, they are responsible for their taxes. So you aren't going to be responsible for paying out those taxes. But these are typically vendors these are services that are provided by a professional or an agency. And so they have typically set rates. Those rates do have to fall in that reasonable and customary as well. But in this setting, it's typically the task is assigned to them, but you're not going to direct them on how to do it. So for example, your support broker will you'll discuss what responsibilities they're going to take on. You'll discuss how many hours a month you think that will take, and then they will invoice you accordingly. Whereas an employee, you're going to decide, I need assistance Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 8 to 4. I'm going to pay you $22 an hour. So that's the difference, but I do encourage everybody to educate themselves on the differences between the two. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of put in writing what those differences are when you are considering it. On the next slide, I have included the criteria for that individual and family directed goods and services line item. Liz, if we can jump to that slide, that just outlines the 4 criteria of a service that can fall under this. So it needs to relate to a need or a goal identified in the person-centered plan. It's going to need to maintain or increase independence, promote opportunities for community living and inclusion, and it should not be available under another waiver service or state plan service. The service is currently capped at $5,000. So this is kind of a tricky service. I don't even need to open the chat because I'm sure that there's people asking for specifics. And I wish that there was a general rule book, but this is more of a team discussion as you are encountering different services that you think may fit under here, deciding whether or not you believe that it meets the 4 criteria, and then submitting it to DDA where they're going to make that final call on whether or not it is something that can be covered by the budget. So I don't have a list for you today, but I encourage you to touch base with your support broker, touch base with your CCS, and just follow the criteria that we've listed on this slide. Our Facebook group is also a great resource for kind of asking those types of questions and getting some more personalized feedback. And then the last thing that we wanted to do was hop back out to the budget
Sarah,
form.
this is Sarah. You asked me to jump in if I thought of something. You want to talk about the use of therapy language under this?
Yes, Carol, I think, could cover it a little bit better, unless she wants me to do it.
But don't use the word therapy ever. It has to be an activity.
Simple as that.
DDA specifically got a comment from CMS about therapies, and that's why the language has got to be an activity. So you would put horseback riding lessons, not therapeutic horseback riding, or any other activity that they're doing would not be specific for therapy. It would be specific for as an activity. So just please be careful about the use of that word.
The use of the word therapy. Carol is going to pull the budget modification process up real quick so that way we can take a glance at it. This is in effect until 6/30/2022 until we get some further guidance from DDA on what's going to happen after that. I have also linked the form and the guidance for the budget modification process in the resources that were sent out, again, if you need those. Carol, I'll let you have the floor on.
All we were going to do is show you this form. Basically, that it's important if you have any extra money that you want to use or need to use before June 30th, that you get this in and get it approved. You're going to put, again, that total of your budget allocation from the LTSS, the budget that's on the budget sheet, and what the difference is the unallocated funds. And those can be allocated to any new service or to existing services. If you allocated any over $5,000 though from any unallocated funds, DDA does have to approve it. 5,000 or less, the FMS can approve it. So this is kind of like a normal budget mod if you're just moving from one thing that's already in your budget that has extra money to another service in your budget that needs money. But if you use those unallocated funds, that amount is capped at $5,000 or DDA has to approve. Then they also have on this form where you can keep a running, this is part of COVID number, this section is part of old COVID requests for extra money. I know that anybody that needed that probably already used that up, but if not, call the FMS and ask them if you've got anything left. The final part of this form is to tell what your total allocation was when you used it and if you have any left, but you're running out of time to have any left and to do 2 mods between now and June 30th. So we just wanted to remind you of this form and this process, which is really pretty easy. Only the participant needs to sign this form, and then you send it directly to your FMS for approval.
And it looks familiar. It is the COVID-5 form that we were using during the pandemic. DDA has just put it into an Excel format. And I have heard that it is a tab on the new budget form, but I do know that that tab has not been working for some people. So like I said, it is separately linked in those resources. But this is the process for using those funds until 6/30. And then we will be waiting for guidance after that. So I am sure that while Liz is pulling our PowerPoint back up for me, for the last time, Liz, I appreciate all your technical support today. So I'm sure many of you guys understood a lot of what I was saying. I'm sure there's a lot of people who are left kind of scratching their heads. It's a lot of information to take in. But that is kind of the beauty of self-directed, is there is so much information out there. And so it's out there if you look for it. It's out there if you want to learn it. And so I've included quite a few resources in the resources document that was sent out to the team or out to everyone who registered for today. I encourage you to glance through those. I've mentioned a lot of the resources that are on there, but there's actually a lot of other resources that I found in the process of putting this together. So I know that it's an overwhelming amount of information, and I'm sure that we are going to have quite a few questions, so we will tackle those. But I just wanted to encourage everyone that self-direction is based on the success of participating in your team. So reach out to your broker. If you don't have one, consider one. Reach out to your coordinator of community supports, your natural supports. They will have further information. Even the FMSs are great tools when it comes to budget information. Anyone on the SDAN board think of anything that I missed before we jump to the last slide and open the floor for some general questions?
Yes, Sarah, this is Patty.
Yep.
I'd just like to recommend that people, if you feel like you are not getting the answers you need from support brokers or CCSs, to contact the regional self-directed lead, because SDAN is not in a position to give individual answers to individual questions. And there are a lot of nuances, as you all know, within self-directed services. So if you feel that you can't get what you need from your support broker, CCS. Again, remember that there's also Christy Culbreth, the statewide coordinator for self-directed services. So you can just keep going up the chain there toward DDA to try to get your answers. SDAN really can't give you like individual answers. We can give people broad knowledge and education.
Right. And I think that is a great segue to the questions. I would love to be able to answer kind of specific questions, but if you have those, I'm going to direct you back to your team. So I am going to ask everyone to keep themselves on mute, and if I can get some assistance. Alicia, did you see any reoccurring questions that I can tackle before I open the floor for people to raise their hand?
Yes, there are several questions, and a couple of them I think might be, hey, if you can write your questions in the chat, that's better, because with
Alicia, you're muted.
Yeah, we just muted the whole chat.
Okay. So anyway, I was going to ask if maybe Karen Bradbury or somebody from the FMS could talk, because I have about 2 or 3 questions. One of them was, how do you contact the FMS? So Karen, if you'd want to
I can put a link to our website in the chat box.
Okay.
And that'll give you guys all the information you would need for us.
Great. The other question that was directly about the FMS is somebody wanted some understanding or a brief explanation about the new codes that ARC has put in with the new timesheets. So if you can explain just a little bit about where they came from, or where to find them even.
Yeah, Bev Holland might be a better contact or resource for that. But yeah, I know we have an updated timesheet and those updated service codes. I thought it was pretty self-explanatory, but what do I know?
I think, whenever something changes, it's a little bit confusing. So go ahead, give a quick update for us.
I was going to say, I've thrown Bev's contact information in the chat.
Sure.
Thanks, Sarah.
A lot of the timesheet code changes have to do with code changes on the budget form. Changes in the names of services that DDA has changed, and we're trying to bring our form up to current status with the DDA codes.
Gotcha. All right. So let me see if there's anything else that. So one person asked, when is the end of the time that you can use the budget? And unless I'm really wrong, the end is the last day of your plan date. So any services that are up until that date, although FMS folks, if you want to jump in as to how long somebody has to actually bill for services in that fiscal year plan. So if you had if your plan year was July 1 and your last day of your use of your money would be June 30th, but how far into July or August can you bill for those June services?
I don't know that we've came up with a date that's going to be our kind of closeout or end date for fiscal year 2022. I don't think DDA has given us a date as to when they'll be expecting us to provide audit information.
Okay. Usually, and in my experience, the FMSs will write to you and explain whatever that date is. You will get notification of it.
Yes, we will send out mass communication and mass emails. So if you guys see any emails from us, please open them and please read them, because there's good information in there.
I was just about to say the same thing.
Yep.
Go
Can
ahead,
the old
Alicia.
budget mod be used, Karen?
Yeah, so I think when you say old budget modification, I think that just means the budget modification form. And I don't think DDA has made any updates to that form at this time.
So we were all, I thought, instructed to use the Appendix K1, the one that Carol showed, but you're accepting either one.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just have different uses. Yeah. Dawn
Okay.
might be able to elaborate on that.
Yes, we're using the COVID form, but we're also using the modification form that comes. I see it on one of the tabs whenever the new budgets come over. That's like the regular budget mod. We're, processing those as well.
Okay, great. All right, so it might help to put the budget form back out. Somebody was wondering where they can find unallocated funds. Where on the budget sheet do they see that number?
So it's going to be at the very top. I mean, if Carol wants to share her screen, it is labeled on the form. So it's going to be 3 spaces over from where you entered your total budget amount.
So here's the, is it on the screen now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it's right here. So this is what came from your LTSS plan on that service authorization page. This is the total of this form at the bottom. This goes up there. It just automatically goes up there. And then it tells you how much unallocated funds you've got. For this fiscal year, for the modifications, these 2 columns are not here. These 2 white ones, it's only this pink one, and you have to do the math. And you can find this number at the bottom of your budget sheet right here.
Carol, while you have this up, somebody asked if you could add job coaching, and maybe you can show where that can be added.
You can add it, but it has to have been an approved service in your LTSS plan. So you've got these are only put in from the LTSS example that we gave you. But here is where it's in meaningful day services, which would be employment services or community development, or what DDA call meaningful day services. So if you wanted employment discovery milestones, they have 3 milestones. If someone's helping you figure out what you want to do, you would put that amount here. That would be on your LTSS budget form. Self-employment development supports. You have to read the waiver to get some of the definitions of these and what's required of them. Some of them are required, like this. Milestones has to be a provider that has been certified in employment supports. Ongoing job supports, though, can be any employee that you want to hire that you feel is qualified to help you. Follow along job supports is mostly from a provider agency. Co-worker supports is confusing to me, and I've read it, the definition a lot. So I don't know very many people that have that.
Let me ask you another question then. Is there a max that anyone's aware of for Ubers or taxis, or is it based on the need of the participant?
This is Veronica. Hey, just chiming in. So I have not seen a max. I don't know if there's any reviewers on here that could maybe chime in, but in my experience, it's related to, each individual budget category and whether you have, cost savings. So I've seen wide ranges get approved for Uber, taxi, Lyft.
I would say it's based on the need.
Okay. So I wanted to clarify any mention of June 30th date on the modifications is because that's the date that Appendix K goes away. And so that budget mod form was Appendix K modification form. And so it automatically is not valid after June 30th, unless DDA, either relabels it or extends its useful life.
Alicia, can I ask Carol one more, the question
Sure.
that I saw in chat? Where on here would you put staff you're hiring as CNA staff from an agency? So if you were purchasing your personal supports through an agency, where would that show up? And it's irrelevant that it's a CNA or just that you're purchasing that support from an agency.
Personal supports vendor contractor. So here's they added all these lines for staff, which makes the form pretty long, and we don't have the ability to edit this at all. But under personal supports, down here is where you would put the number of hours, the rate, which is usually the actual rate that DDA has in the plan. Has on their rate sheet, and the number of weeks. There would be no taxes because that's all included in the rate.
Okay. While you're there, can you show somebody where health benefits might go?
Health benefits go right here under staff benefits, the very first one. So if we have money left over, so say this employee came back and said, my husband just lost, or my wife just lost their health insurance, I need you to contribute to mine. You could say, well, we'll contribute $300 a month, and that would be 300 times this much, $3,600. And you could do that if you had the money left in your budget.
Okay. Somebody asked, what happens if you don't use the unallocated funds?
We believe that it reverts to the general fund, but it could stay with DDA. We don't know, but it is unused funds and
not available.
Not available after the time. It goes away at the end of your plan year, whether it's a fiscal year or a different plan year. So what we don't know is the process to allocate it going forward on July 1st.
Right. But once your plan year is over, the unallocated funds are no longer associated with a particular participant. But I do want to stress at this juncture that is, when people's needs are met, there is no need to expend your unallocated funds. So the goal here obviously is to meet a person's needs, but you don't have to spend it all, and you can't use it after the date.
Lisa, let me add to
go
that.
ahead.
For those of you that have been around a while, like I have in DDA, we always were told as family members that you need to use your budget or you'll lose it. And that is no longer true. You're going to build a new budget with your new plan year. So if there's unallocated money, don't feel the need to use it. It will not go away next year. I mean, that money will not be available to you, but it doesn't mean that the next year in the next plan, you won't have adequate funding. So don't feel like you have to rush out at the end of the plan year and spend that money in some way. It really is not necessary any longer, or it's not even the message any longer. So that is true. That's what we used to be told, but that's no longer true.
Thanks, Patty. I have two questions regarding holiday pay. Somebody's wanting to know what dates are considered holiday, and where do you enter that on the form, that time and a half?
So you as the employer are going to dictate the holidays that you will be paying for, and DDA will likely request a policy that outlines that. Carol, do you want to kind of answer the other half of that?
Regarding any additional benefit, holiday differential would go here. If there's, I'm trying to think of a different, another kind of benefit for an employee. I know that in one case we did put PPE, providing PPE, since that was only provided through Appendix K for a short time and won't be going around, that providing PPE could be put there as long as DDA approves it. They did in the last plan that we submitted that way. So this other benefits category right here is where you would add this amount of what the difference is that you're paying when they work on holidays. When they're off on holidays, all I've ever done is just include it in the PTO. I don't know if there's other support brokers or people on here who have done it differently.
Thanks. So a couple more questions. That somebody asked the difference between LTSS and a PCP.
So LTSS is the system that your coordinator of community services, your CCS, is using to enter all of the information in. So your plan is housed in there. Your budget's going to be housed in there. Your PCP, it's an acronym that stands for your person-centered plan. And that's the document that kind of gets into the nitty-gritty of your goals, your strengths, your needs. And that's what's associated with the budget. And the plan kind of dictates the budget, and the budget dictates the plan. So they kind of support each other. But PCP is just the acronym for person-centered plan.
Great. Can you confirm that when using the Form 5 by the end of June, that it is to increase or add funding to already approved services? If you're wanting to add a new service, would that take a plan revision? And my understanding is, and so FMSs or Sarah, Carol, that up to a certain dollar amount, you can do a new service. And I think that it's $5,000 to add a new service, and the FMS can approve that. Anything greater than 5,000 would require a plan revision. Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah, cool. Very good.
Thank you. Somebody asked why is Sick and Safe only available for Montgomery County? And I believe that's because they enacted a law to that effect. So let's see what else we got.
They being Montgomery County government.
Montgomery County, I'm sorry.
But
Thank you.
You can still provide it. That's what the PTO benefit is for. You can provide that sick leave and safe leave. But in Montgomery County, you're required to do a certain number of hours for every employee.
Great. There were, as we suspected, a lot of questions about individual family-directed goods and services, what isn't covered. And I think the most important thing to take home really is that no use of the word therapy, only activities, things like the 4 qualifications that Sarah gave you. And again, I would encourage everyone to share the information of what services have worked for them in our Facebook group, perhaps, to reach out to your support broker and to your CCS. But, people have done different things that other people might not have thought of that would be great to share. And at some point, it would be great if we can have maybe Christy on one time and have her, talk about individual family-directed goods and services and how the DDA views that. But we're just not equipped to answer all those individual questions that will require a DDA approval to use. So let me see what else we got.
With that, I was just going to kind of just get ready to close it out to be respectful of everyone's time. I did throw the link. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to if somebody wasn't able to type for whatever reason into the chat, but has a question that's that they want to pose, if they want to raise their hand, wanted to make sure we gave people an opportunity who may not be able to use the chat service.
And I did throw the link to our Facebook group that we've referenced a few times into the chat. So if you haven't given it a follow, it is a closed group. And I have found that it is a good resource for some of our families who are looking for advice, or they have some of those questions that SDAN's just not in a position to be kind of providing that individualized response.
Sarah, you see this question that is difference between a CCS and a support broker?
Okay, I saw it and then it flew past me, so thank you. So the coordinator of community services is essentially your support staff through DDA. They are your liaison between your team, whether you were in the provided service or in the provider-based or in the self-directed. They used to be called resource coordinators. So they are to connect you to the resources and make sure that the resources that you are connected to are running smoothly. Your support broker is an entirely different person. The support broker only exists under the self-direction model. And I like to refer to the support broker as kind of the human resources department of the self-directed program. So this person's going to be the individual that's helping you maneuver this program, helping you advocate, kind of helping train you on how to find staff, how to train your staff. They are going to be the ones that are submitting your timesheets. They are the liaison typically between you and the FMS. But they are two different people. And I think the big thing to note is that the broker is only in the self-directed program. And right now it is optional. But I do encourage everyone to interview at least one or two and have them a part of your team. Well, the comments are moving quick. Did I miss any?
There was one quick question. The support brokers don't submit timesheets, and they don't submit the timesheets that a staff does unless you hire them as staff, and most people hire them as vendors. But they would submit an invoice for participant approval.
All right.
And does anybody see any hands up? Because if not, I think we can close it out.
I see one. Kathleen's hands up, but I don't see.
I can't figure out how to.
Kathleen raised her hand physically, not with the little.
Oh. I was going to say there is no way to do that. If you want to go ahead and take yourself off of mute to ask the question.
The hand raising's under reactions at the bottom, just if anybody couldn't find it.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
hold on. I think that was to Kathleen. You had your hand raised.
All right. Yeah. I just want to be able to get this after this is ended so I can study it more. And I got an answer, SDS network to everyone. Does that mean do I hit SDS network to everyone, or how do I?
No, you'll go to our website, which is marylandsds.org. And they'll be posted on our website along with the recording, probably by the end of the week, there'll be a recording of this probably.
Okay, so I can come back and study what you've done.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I threw that link in the chat for those who need it.
I think Karen had a question or a comment.
Yeah, Karen, did you have a question?
Yes, my name is Karen Smith. I had a question about the Form 5. Is it too late to do a Form 5?
No,
you have until June 30th.
You have until June 30th.
Done before June 30th, so you can actually use the money.
Okay, thank you.
Ariel?
Yes, thank you. This is more of a request, a begging and pleading, if you will, about IFDGS. I think it would be so helpful to have either a forum on Facebook or better yet, an actual session just where people can share their success or disaster experiences with providing rationale for IFDGS. I don't know if anybody has read the waiver, Appendix C in that area. It's a disaster. It's basically like saying, I would like a pizza, hold the cheese, hold the sauce, hold the crust. And if you're hungry for pizza, enjoy. I mean, there's literally, I did not see any way anybody got anything approved. So my God, I would be grateful if we could have that kind of sharing session, because other people who have been there before you are really the best resource.
We could try doing that, but I think
I was going to say, I can pin a comment. Carol, I can pin a comment on our SDS Facebook page. So I'll go ahead and make the comment and pin it so it'll stay at the top. And if you have any of those experiences that Ariel is referring to, that way it's easy to access and everybody is kind of using the same post. I don't know how much further we can kind of help from there, but at least it would keep it all the information in one place, or all the suggestions, advice.
Yeah, I mean, I've had success with ...
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that our law is going to address this. It's been a while since I read it, but I'm pretty sure that our law is going to attempt to help with this issue because it does refer to the CMS definition of that, and it also requires that the cap of $5,000 come off. So I have to get my brain back into the bill mode now that it looks like it's a law.
That's great, since the $5,000 cap was the only thing that was clear in it.
So
Yeah.
these are great things to think about also, because we hope to have some conversations with DDA and also with our membership about, you know, how the bill gets actually executed and laid into program policies and such. So keep your thinking caps on, because we'll be wanting to pick everybody's brain.
Yeah, and Ariel, this is Patty. I think that what you're asking for is a really great idea. Well, I think SDAN, we can kind of think about that because, as we've all experienced in our lives, raising our children, sometimes when we publicly discuss something, we kind of fear there's retribution in some way. So I know that that's not a foreign concept to parents. So we would want to be careful about that conversation and how do we share that information among each other in some kind of anonymous fashion, because you wouldn't want to then, some other people may not want to put out there what services they got approved for fear that it will no longer be approved. So we have to figure out how to best facilitate that conversation.
Thank you.
And I know that there's a way to make your post anonymous. I don't know how to do it yet, so let me figure that out. But I will post instructions with that Facebook post. The Facebook post or the Facebook group is a closed group. People do have to answer questions that we monitor to get into the group. But past that, people should be careful about what they're putting in writing, what they're sharing in the group. And so if I can go ahead and figure out how to kind of take that next step, I will share that when I make that post. So if that comfort level isn't there, you can do so anonymously, but let me figure it out. All righty. Well, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I think, did we get all of the raised hands?
I think we got all of the raised hands and most
Ariel's
of the questions asked.
All righty. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. As always, this is recorded. It will be up on the site. I have thrown the link to the site in the chat box. I also took some time to throw the resources over there. But again, if you did not get them, they're not in your spam, please reach out to the info@marylandsds.org.